I left my daughter with my parents while I was on a business trip. When I went to pick her up, she was nowhere to be seen. I asked, "Where's my daughter?" My mother laughed and said she wouldn't stop crying, so I locked her in the basement. I rushed to the door and saw red liquid seeping out. I opened it, and my hands started to tremble as I called the police. Sarah Thompson was gazing out the office window, making final preparations for her business trip starting tomorrow. Boston's autumn twilight came early, and the setting sun between the skyscrapers cast long shadows across her desk. For the past 7 years, since her divorce, Sarah had succeeded as a marketing director at a major pharmaceutical company while raising her daughter, Lily, alone. "Sarah, I finished the final version of tomorrow's presentation materials," her assistant, Emily, said, handing her the documents. Sarah gave a grateful smile as she looked them over. "Thank you, Emily. It's perfect." She closed the file and glanced at her watch. "Is it 6:30 already? I need to pick up Lily." Sarah hurriedly grabbed her bag and slipped on her coat. Her mind was constantly filled with work deadlines and her daughter's school event schedules, but no matter how busy she was, she had always avoided sacrificing time with her daughter. When she arrived at the elementary school with the after-school program, Lily was already waiting at the entrance. The little girl with black hair tied in 2 ponytails immediately jumped up when she spotted her mother. "Mom, today we made volcanoes in science class." Sarah embraced her daughter and kissed her cheek. "That's wonderful. Tell me all about it when we get home." In the car, Lily excitedly continued talking about everything that happened at school, while Sarah nodded along with her daughter's stories. She was thinking about her upcoming business trip. Normally, Lily could stay with friends or a babysitter, but unfortunately, this time, the school's 3-day fall break coincided with her trip. While preparing dinner, Sarah made her decision. Her options were limited. She would have to ask her parents, "Lily, you'll be staying with Grandpa and Grandma while I'm away on my business trip. Is that okay?" Lily, who was eating pasta at the dinner table, paused her fork and looked up at her mother. She liked Grandpa George. He was kind and always told interesting stories, but Grandma Margaret was a bit scary. At Grandma's house, Lily's voice was tinged with anxiety. Sarah understood her daughter's feelings. Her own relationship with her mother was complicated. Margaret's approach to raising the young Sarah had been excessively strict. If her room was messy, no dinner. If her grades dropped, no going out. If she made excuses, it was considered talking back and she was punished. Her father, George, was gentle and understanding, but always deferred to his wife's decisions and never protected his daughter. When Sarah got married and left home, she felt as if she'd been released from prison. Even after her divorce, she had kept her distance from her parents' house, determined not to let Lily experience what she had. However, Margaret seemed to have changed in recent years. Each time she met her granddaughter, she showed a softer expression than before. "It's all right, Lily. Grandma's gotten nicer lately, hasn't she? And it's only for 3 days." Sarah tried to reassure her daughter. Lily nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll be fine, but promise you'll call every day." "Of course, we'll do video calls too," Sarah promised. After dinner, Sarah called her parents. Her mother answered the phone. "Sarah, this is unusual." Margaret's voice wasn't as cold as it used to be. "Mum, I have a favor to ask. I have a sudden business trip next week. Could you look after Lily for 3 days? There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. "Of course, I'd love to take care of my granddaughter." Sarah couldn't believe it. The mother she once knew would have lectured her about putting work before family. "Really? Thank you. That's a big help. Lily is such a sweet child. We've gotten softer in our old age." Margaret laughed. "Besides, time with grandchildren is special." After the call ended, Sarah felt mixed emotions. Had her mother really changed? Or was she simply tired with age? Either way, it was a change to be grateful for. The day before her trip, Sarah and Lily headed to her parents' house. The 2-story brick house remained unchanged in Sarah's memory, exuding dignity and strictness. The front door opened, and Margaret and George came out to greet them. "Lily, how you've grown!" Margaret embraced her granddaughter. Lily seemed a bit tense but returned a smile. George said to Sarah, "Don't worry, we'll take good care of her." At the entrance, Sarah was hugged tightly by her daughter. "I'll be all right, Mom." Lily smiled bravely. "Tell me all about your trip when you get back." Sarah stroked her daughter's head and promised, "I'll call every night." She thanked her parents and got into her car. Watching Lily's small figure in the rearview mirror, She tried to shake off her anxiety. During her trip, Sarah video called with Lily every night. The first 2 days went without any problems. Lily happily talked about playing in the garden with Grandpa and how Grandma had baked special cookies for her. However, on the morning of the final day, it was George who answered the call. "Good morning, Sarah." "Lily?" "Oh, she's gone shopping with your mother." "Shopping?" Sarah looked at her watch. It was 8 in the morning. "This early?" "Well, something about an early morning sale." George's voice sounded slightly tense. "I'll have them call you back when they return." After ending the call, Sarah felt something was off. Her mother liked shopping, but going out first thing in the morning with her granddaughter seemed a bit strange. However, she pushed the thought aside and prepared for her final meeting. Fortunately, all her business negotiations finished earlier than scheduled, and she was able to return home several hours ahead of plan. Sarah drove directly from the airport to her parents' house. Normally, she would have gone straight home to recover from the trip, but her desire to see her daughter won out. On the way, she called George's cell phone several times to speak with Lily, but there was no answer. They must be out, she told herself, though something nagged at the back of her mind. When Sarah arrived at her parents' house, she unlocked the front door and went inside. The sound of a television came from the living room. "I'm back, Lily," she called out as she entered the living room. There sat her mother, Margaret, alone on the sofa, watching TV. "Oh, Sarah, you're back already? I thought you were coming tomorrow evening." Margaret turned down the volume with the remote and looked up at Sarah. Her expression showed mild surprise, but there was something unnatural about it. "The meetings ended early. Where's Lily?" "Lily?" Margaret tilted her head and laughed lightly. "She must be playing somewhere, I suppose." Sarah frowned. "Where's Dad?" "He went shopping. He should be back soon." Sarah left the living room and began searching the house. The guest room, where Lily had been sleeping, the backyard, the kitchen. But her daughter was nowhere to be found. When she returned to the living room, her heart was pounding with anxiety. "Mom, where is Lily? Tell me the truth." Margaret slowly turned off the television and turned to face Sarah. The smile from earlier was gone, replaced by something cold in her face. "That child has been crying non-stop. I want mommy. I want mommy." So annoying. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "What are you saying? Where is Lily?" Margaret stood up and began pouring tea. Her movements were calm, but there was something unsettling in her tone of voice. "You were the same as a child. Noisy, disobedient." "Mom," Sarah's voice trembled. "Tell me where Lily is right now." Margaret held her cup and took a slow sip. Her eyes were on Sarah, but she seemed to be looking into the distance. "That child needed discipline because you didn't raise her properly." Sarah confronted her mother. "What do you mean? What did you do?" "I didn't do anything. Just." Margaret's lips formed a thin smile. "She was so noisy. I locked her in the basement." All the blood drained from Sarah's body. Memories from her childhood flooded back. The dark, damp basement. The terrifying hours locked inside whenever Margaret decided she had done something wrong. Sarah had suppressed these memories for years, but now they all came rushing back vividly. "You put Lily in the basement?" Sarah's voice was shaking. "Since when?" "Since yesterday afternoon, I think." Margaret shrugged. "I was planning to let her out before you got back, but you came home early." For a moment, Sarah couldn't believe this was really happening. Her own mother had locked her daughter in the basement for over 24 hours. "Have you lost your mind?" Sarah cried. "Lily is only 7 years old. Why would you?" Before finishing her sentence, Sarah turned on her heel and ran toward the basement stairs. She could hear her mother's laughter behind her, but it didn't register. When she stood before the old wooden door leading to the basement, Sarah's feet froze. From under the door, a red liquid was slowly seeping out. "Lily," she shouted, but there was no answer. Though her entire body was trembling with fear, Sarah placed her shaking hand on the doorknob. She didn't want to imagine it, but the worst scenario crossed her mind. What that red liquid might be was too terrifying to consider. "Lily, are you okay?" "It's Mom." She turned the doorknob, but it was locked. Sarah began desperately pounding on the door. "Lily, answer me." A weak voice was heard. "Mom?" Hearing that small voice, a glimmer of hope lit up in Sarah's chest. "Lily, stay away from the door. Mum's going to open it." Sarah looked around and found an old emergency key hanging on the hallway wall. With trembling hands, she took the key and inserted it into the lock. With a click, the lock opened, and Sarah pushed the door. From the dark basement came the damp air, along with a strong smell of red wine. In the dim light, Sarah saw a fallen wine rack and broken bottles scattered on the floor. And there, sitting huddled among them, was Lily. Her daughter, wearing clothes soaked with red wine, was trembling from cold and fear. Sarah cried out as she rushed to her daughter and held her tightly. "Lily, are you okay? Are you hurt?" Lily clung to her mother's chest and began to cry. "Mom, I was scared. It was so dark." Sarah took out her cell phone from her pocket and immediately called the police. "I need help. My mother locked my daughter in the basement and abused her." Her voice trembled with anger and fear. While explaining the situation to the police, Sarah picked up Lily and carried her out of the basement. Her daughter's body was cold, and her clothes were wet with red wine, but fortunately, there didn't seem to be any serious injuries. However, Lily's face was still marked with fear. "Grandma got angry," Lily said through tears. "I didn't do anything wrong. It's okay now," Sarah said, stroking her daughter's hair. "Mom's here. I won't let anything like this happen to you ever again." Sarah carried her daughter as she hurried out of the basement. Fortunately, Lily had no noticeable external injuries, but she was trembling from the cold and fear. "Let's go to the car," Sarah said quietly. "I have a warm blanket there." She placed Lily in the back seat of the car and took out a blanket from the trunk to wrap around her daughter. "Stay here. Mom will be right back until the police arrive." Lily grabbed her mother's sleeve with trembling lips. "Don't go. It's all right. I'll be right back. I promise." Sarah kissed her daughter's cold cheek. "Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. When you hear the police sirens, wait until I knock on the window." Lily, looking anxious, slowly nodded. Sarah closed the car door, made sure Lily locked it from inside, and then returned to the house. In the living room, Margaret was sitting quietly. Her expression no longer held the eerie smile from before. Only a cold indifference remained. "You called the police?" Margaret's voice was surprisingly calm. "Isn't that a bit dramatic?" Sarah felt her body shaking with anger. "You locked my daughter in the basement for over 24 hours. It was part of discipline." Margaret shrugged. "Are you planning to bring outsiders into our family matters?" "I don't understand what you're thinking," Sarah said with a trembling voice. "This is abuse. Clear child abuse." Margaret stood up and approached Sarah. In her eyes was the cruel light that Sarah had feared since childhood. "That child should have been more mine than yours." Those words made Sarah shudder. "What are you talking about?" Before she could answer, Margaret's eyes turned toward the window. The sound of police sirens was approaching. "You don't understand what you've done," Margaret said in a low voice. "We're family." A few minutes later, 2 police officers were at the front door. Sarah explained the situation and told them Lily was waiting in the car. "My daughter is safe, but very frightened. My mother locked her in the basement for over 24 hours. A young female officer went to check on Lily, while the older male officer took Margaret to another room for questioning. Sarah returned to the car and opened the back door. Lily was still curled up under the blanket. "The police are talking with Grandma." Sarah sat beside her daughter and gently put an arm around her. "Can you tell me what happened?" Lily remained silent for a while, but eventually began speaking, in a small voice. "Grandma was nice the first day, but yesterday, when I cried because I wanted to see you, she got really angry." Lily's eyes filled with tears. She said, "Noisy children must be punished," and took me to the basement. Sarah felt her chest tighten. Those were the same words she had heard many times as a child. She closed the door and locked it. "It was so dark, I was so scared," Lily continued, trembling. "I knocked on the door many times, but no one came. Then I fell and heard something break." Sarah gently stroked her daughter's hair as she listened. Lily's tearful account fueled her anger even more. "Did I do something bad?" Lily's question nearly broke Sarah's heart. "No, absolutely not," Sarah said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. Grandma is unwell." Nearby, the female police officer approached, taking notes as she walked toward them. "Young lady, I think it would be good for you to see a doctor, as your mother suggested. You don't seem to have any serious injuries, but just to be safe." Sarah nodded. "Thank you. I'll take her to the hospital right away." Just then, another car hurriedly parked in front of the house. George jumped out, looking pale with fear and distress. "Sarah, Lily." George rushed over to them. "What happened?" "I got a call from the police." Sarah looked at her father with cold eyes. "Did you know, Dad? Did you know Mom locked Lily in the basement?" George's expression crumbled. "No, I was." He stumbled over his words. "You didn't know, or were you just looking the other way as usual?" Sarah's voice contained years of anger and disappointment. George shook his head. Sarah, please listen. I was out shopping. When I came back, Margaret said Lily went to a friend's house. I thought it was strange, but Lily looked at her grandfather and shrank back slightly. Sarah didn't miss this. Lily, did Grandpa do anything? Lily shook her head. Grandpa wasn't there, but Grandma said, don't tell Dad when he gets back. Let's keep it a secret. George covered his face with both hands. Oh, what have I done? The male police officer came out of the house. Miss Thompson, I'm concerned about your mother's condition. She doesn't seem mentally stable. May I call a medical team? Sarah nodded. Please do. She turned back to Lily and hugged her tightly. It's okay now. I won't let anything like this happen to you again. George approached and nervously said, Sarah, there's something I need to tell you about Margaret. This isn't the first time. Sarah stared at her father. Deep regret showed in his eyes. What do you mean about Margaret's condition? George's voice was heavy. We should talk with the police. There are many things you don't know. Holding her daughter, Sarah prepared herself to face the truth that was about to be revealed. The hospital waiting room was wrapped in silence. Sarah leaned against the wall with her eyes closed, exhausted, as she waited for Lily's examination to finish. Lily had slight dehydration and some scrapes, but, fortunately, no serious injuries. She was now talking with the female police officer in another room. George appeared with 2 cups of coffee. He offered one to Sarah and sat down beside her. His face showed fatigue and deep regret. Thank you. Sarah accepted the coffee silently. After a moment of silence, George sighed. Do we have time to talk now? Sarah looked at her father. Inside her swirled anger, confusion, and above all, questions. Yes. Lily's exam will take a while longer. A police officer approached from the separate room. I'd like to speak with both of you. The 3 moved to a small consultation room in the hospital. As Sarah sat in a chair, the police officer opened his notebook. George, could you tell us about your wife's condition? George took a deep breath. His hands were trembling. Margaret, my wife, was diagnosed with bipolar disorder more than 20 years ago, he began quietly. At first, the treatment was working well. She took her medication regularly and received counseling. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. 20 years ago? When I was in middle school? George nodded. Yes. The symptoms were there before the diagnosis, but we just thought she was a strict mother. Then what? Anger seeped into Sarah's voice. George lowered his eyes. Margaret would sometimes take extreme actions, he said, especially toward you. The police officer quietly intervened. Sarah, has your mother done things like this in the past? Sarah desperately searched her childhood memories. Something was beginning to surface at the edge of her consciousness. The basement, darkness, fear. I don't remember, she said in a low voice, but now I'm starting to recall something. George's voice trembled. Margaret would lock you in the basement many times, claiming it was discipline. The longest was 2 days. The blood drained from Sarah's face. What? Suddenly, a flood of memories overwhelmed her. The terrifying hours in the dark basement, the despair of crying out with no one coming, the mixed feelings of relief and fear when she heard the door open, and Margaret's cold voice asking, Have you learned to be a good girl? Is that why I have claustrophobia? Sarah asked with a trembling voice. George nodded sadly. I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have protected you sooner. Why didn't anyone tell me? Tears of anger welled in Sarah's eyes. Why wasn't I informed about something so important? Because Margaret seemed to get better, George explained. The treatment was working, and there hadn't been any problems for years. Besides, you left home right after college and didn't keep much contact after that. Sarah bit her lip. Indeed, she had consciously distanced herself from her parents, especially after getting married. But recently, she stopped taking her medication on her own. George continued, I should have noticed. Her behavior started changing. The police officer quietly asked, When did you notice the changes? About 2 months ago, George answered. Her mood swings became more severe, and sometimes she seemed confused. But when I pointed it out, she got angry and insisted, I'm perfectly normal. And you agreed to take care of your granddaughter? The police officer's voice held no accusation, but George shrunk with guilt. She was so happy about it, said she'd wanted to spend time with her granddaughter. I wanted to believe her. Sarah stood up and moved to the window. Her heart was filled with anger and sadness. What will happen to Margaret now? She quietly asked. She's undergoing a psychiatric evaluation, the police officer answered. Depending on the results, involuntary hospitalization might be necessary. We're also considering applying for a restraining order to protect your daughter. Sarah gazed out the hospital window. In the autumn twilight, the streetlights were gradually coming on. "Dad," she said without turning around, "why didn't you tell me anything all these years?" George sighed. "I was ashamed. I couldn't forgive my own weakness for not being able to stop Margaret. Seeing you leave home and build your own life, I thought I shouldn't dig up the past." Sarah shook her head. "But now that past has hurt my daughter." The examination room door opened, and Lily appeared with a female police officer. Sarah hurried to her daughter and embraced her. "Are you okay?" Lily nodded slightly. Fear still lingered in her eyes, but there was also a sense of relief. "The doctor said I was brave," Lily said in a small voice. Sarah lightly kissed her daughter's cheek. "That's right. You are a very brave girl." The doctor came in and explained Lily's condition. "Physically, there are no major issues, but psychological care is needed. I recommend trauma counseling." Sarah nodded. "Thank you. I'll arrange it right away." After the doctor left, Sarah looked at her father. "We're going now. We'll stay at a hotel." George nodded sadly. "I understand. But can I see you again sometime?" Sarah hesitated for a moment. "I can't say anything right now, but for Lily's sake, I hope we can repair our relationship someday." She took Lily's hand and left the hospital. On a snowy winter day in Boston, Sarah closed her work laptop and gazed out the window. A year had passed since the incident. Her apartment offered a panoramic view of the city from the 12th floor. Though smaller than her previous home, this apartment was filled with the hope of a new beginning. "Mom, look." Lily burst into the living room, holding up a picture she had brought home from school. Now, 8 years old, her daughter's smile was brighter and more confident than before. "That's wonderful, Lily." Sarah took the picture and gazed at it. It was a colorful family portrait. 2 small figures were standing hand in hand. "Is this us?" Lily nodded proudly. "Yes," Counselor Rachel said to draw happy memories. Sarah hugged her daughter. The trauma counseling was gradually showing results. Lily still had nightmares sometimes, but not as frequently as before. She still feared dark places but was slowly overcoming it. Sarah herself continued weekly therapy sessions. As childhood memories became clearer, she began to understand how her behavior patterns were connected to past trauma. It was a painful process but a necessary journey. In terms of work, Sarah had made a major decision. The intense business trip schedule of the past was gone, and she increased remote work to prioritize time with her daughter. The company understood her situation and accommodated her flexibility. "Mom, we're making pizza today, right?" "You promised," Lily said as she walked toward the kitchen. "Of course. I keep my promises," Sarah smiled. Her smartphone rang, and her father's name appeared on the screen. Sarah sighed. Her relationship with George remained complicated. He called almost weekly, hoping to meet Lily. Though Sarah had initially refused, she was slowly opening her heart to her father's sincere attitude of repentance. "Hello, Dad." "Hi, Sarah." George's voice sounded older than before. "How are you and Lily?" "We're both fine," Sarah answered. "Lily just got back from school." "That's good." After a moment of silence, George continued, "About Christmas, have you thought about it?" Sarah looked at the snowy scene outside the window. A few weeks ago, George had asked to see Sarah and Lily for Christmas. Margaret was still receiving treatment at a facility, and there would be no visits with her. "I'm still thinking about it, Dad," Sarah answered quietly. "I haven't decided yet. I understand. I don't want to rush you." George's voice mixed resignation with hope. "I just want to see you both." After ending the call, Sarah headed to the kitchen. Lily had already put on an apron and was arranging the ingredients. "Was that Grandpa?" Lily asked. Sarah nodded. "Yes. He wants to see us for Christmas." Lily paused and looked up at her mother. "That would be okay. Isn't Grandpa lonely?" Those words surprised and moved Sarah. The depth of her 8-year-old daughter's compassion warmed her heart. "Really? You want to see Grandpa?" Lily thought for a moment before nodding. "Yes. Grandpa isn't a bad person. He just didn't help." Hearing Lily use the exact words she had learned in counseling last year, Sarah couldn't help but smile. That night, after Lily went to bed, Sarah sat on the living room sofa, lost in thought. She picked up her smartphone and sent a message to her father. "Would you like to come for Christmas Eve dinner? Nothing fancy, but Lily wants to see you too." The moment she pressed send, Sarah felt she had taken a new step forward. Blood ties cannot be changed, but the nature of family is something they could choose for themselves. In that choice, she had to admit, lay the possibility of forgiveness and healing. Outside the window, snow continued to fall quietly. Tomorrow would be a new day, and Sarah believed that, even with small steps forward, the future could change.